Hello and welcome to Copic in the Craft Room. It's Michelle Houghton here, and we are going to be coloring up these adorable crocodiles. Now this is part of a larger stamp set that Heffy Doodle produced, and you know me, I love anything that's going to make me grin or giggle, and so these guys certainly fit the bill. So Heffy Doodle is a company that is across the ocean from me, but they have incredible customer service and they got these out to me quick lickety split. So anyway, I'm going to color up these little crocodile guys. I'm going to actually use the same colors on both the crocodiles. I'm keeping that portion fairly simple. And then I will do a little bit of sky, but then I'm going to do a really fun background that then they're going to end up standing on. So I've got a series of yellow greens that we're going to work with on these guys. And I'm going to start with the crocodile to the right. And I'm filling him in with a YG21. So I'm giving a pretty decent base to this little guy. So I'm using kind of that circular stroke, giving that nice, even, smooth surface to work over. Now, if this part was a little blotchy, it's not going to be a big deal because I'm coming back and adding texture on top of the whole thing. But I gave him a pretty nice coat to start, and then while that ink is still wet, I'm going to start adding my texture on top. So now I'm coming in and I'm adding some dots. And this first layer of dots with YG41 is going to be all over the crocodile. So notice the value isn't a whole lot darker, but the saturation changed. So that's the change in color. It got a little bit more gray in it. So change in color, but I've added that first layer of dots over the entire crocodile. The second one is a G02. Now this one I'm going to focus in more on the bottom portion, kind of coming up toward the top of the crocodile, his back. So I come up under his snout, I come up under his tail with the dots, and then as I go up toward the top of his nose and toward his back, I thin those out, meaning I just spread the dots out. I'm going to come along both arms and get his both little feet, and those can be more just flicks versus dots. And I did go ahead and add that color to his spikes as well. So G05 is going to be one more layer, and this one I'm going to do the same areas but fewer dots. So I stay really close to that bottom edge, and the dots start spreading out a lot faster. And I'm almost drawing a line right along his spine for those little spikes. So I kept that part really simple. These aren't huge images, and so they go really fast. So then I'm going to do two things. I'm going to come back in with that lightest color, that YG21, and I'm going to add some dots on top of some of those darker areas. And I am slowing down at this point, so I'm holding the pen in place for 3 or 4 seconds in each spot. It almost looks like I'm in real time now, and that's because I've actually slowed down. What that's going to do is twofold. It's going to actually add a whole nother layer of texture, but it's also going to soften some of those darker dots so that they kind of start smashing together and it looks less like dots and more like texture. The last step is I'm going to do the same thing with a colorless blender. So again, I've slowed way down. I'm holding the pen down 3 or 4 seconds in each spot. And now this time I'm focusing in on some of those lighter areas, and I still go down into the darker areas, but the colorless blender, I focus more into those lighter areas. And again, softening the dots together and adding another layer of texture to my little crocodile. So that goes pretty quick. I don't need a whole lot of those, and you can always come back and add more. Because I've done it wet, all of this is pretty soft. None of those dots are super crisp. The second crocodile is literally the exact same steps. So you're going to notice I'm going even faster at this point because I've sped myself up even faster. I figure you've seen the process. You can see now what I do on the second crocodile, but we've kind of talked through it once. I've added that base of YG21. I'm adding my first layer of dots. This goes all over the crocodile with YG41. Added that saturation so he has a little bit deeper color. That added gray. To me, this looks like it has more blue in it, but G02 is next. That's going to go along his belly and his underside of his tail and his nose. This guy's got a big grin, toothy grin, which I love. And notice how the dots spread out as they come up toward the top, his spiny back. G05 is the last color, and again, much fewer dots. So they spread out a lot faster. They stay really focused in on those lower portions of the body, lower portions of each arm. I'm going ahead and dotting each one of the spines on this guy with this darker color. Doing some slower dots with the YG21, especially in those darker areas. Again, this is really slow. I'm literally holding the pen down and going kind of 1, 2, 3, lift, 1, 2, 3, lift, about. And you can vary that. The same tempo or speed with the colorless blender. I hold it down for at least a slow count of 2 or 3. Working my way across those lighter areas. And again, I can always go back over now to the croc on the right and add more spots to him if I wanted. Because the ink is dry now, the spots would be a lot crisper. So the background, I'm doing this technique on Yupo paper. This is white, so it's not the transparent kind. And I'm using 3 of my Copic reinkers. I pulled over like 5 colors, but I'm really only going to end up using about 3. So the Yupo paper is what I'm going to start with, and I've got some press-on foil as well from Prima. So the colors I'm going to end up using are BG10, BG45, and B05. Those are the colors. And then I've got this Prima rub-on foil. Sorry, not press-on, rub-on foil. So I'll tear a piece of paper out of here. Now I do a ton of experimenting to get the look I want, and I'm not showing you all of it because it literally took me about 45 minutes to get what I really wanted. And that's ridiculous. You don't need to see that. So all I'm doing is dropping ink on the Yupo. It is doing the rest of the work. This is single drops of these different colors, those 3 colors. And now if I had slowed down a little bit, this was going to happen a lot faster for me. But what I'm going for is some thicker portions of ink. See how in this one, how you have those puddles of ink kind of around the edges? That's what I need, because those are going to stay a little bit sticky even when the rest of the ink dries. So I go with my foil and I lay it kind of silver side down and press. And I just used a spoon to do that. I pressed on the foil, and the sticky portions make the foil stick. And so you can see when I peel that back up. So I'm coming back over the second side, adding a little bit more ink. And so now you can see I've got that big rim around, but I still wanted some little pieces in the center. So I'm blowing on it. I'm not being very patient, and that's part of the issue. If I did one layer, came back when it was totally dry and did literally 3 or 4 drops, let it totally dry, do 3 or 4 drops, let it dry, I have better luck getting those ridges that I want and the thickening of ink. Sorry for my head in the way. I'm blowing on it because, again, I'm not being very patient. It doesn't take very long to dry because it is that alcohol-based Copic ink. But you can kind of see I'm trying to blow on that top section because it's still pretty wet. But it does this amazing foil background that came out so cute. I mean, at my daughter's suggestion, I left it at the bottom half of the card. Thank you so much for joining me this week at Copic in the Craft Room. I hope you have a happy, colorful week.